G'day, it's Nigel here. In this three-part series I'm going to give you what I think are the most important pieces of advice and exercises that I've given to my clients over the years. So today in part one I want to talk to you about something that's overlooked or often overlooked by other practitioners, and if it's relevant it could cost you a grand total of $5 and end up saving you years of pain. It's called short leg syndrome. Basically we're not symmetrical beings. If you took a mirror image down the middle of your face, you'd see that one eye was a bit higher than the other, and one ear, and so on, and one shoulder's often a little bit higher than the other. We're just not symmetrical beings, and in fact if we were, we'd look a bit funny actually. So that often comes across in our leg length. We've often got one leg longer than the other. Whether that is a contributing factor to low back pain really depends on how big the leg length discrepancy is. Usually if it's more than about 4 or 5 mils, it can make a difference. So how do you tell if you've got a leg length discrepancy? Well, just hang on a sec, I'll change camera views and I'll show you. Okay, so when you're standing up, just have a look at yourself, and just one way to tell is to get someone to look at your hips and see if one hip's higher than the other, or you can just look in a mirror. I actually wear a 4mm wedge on my left leg, and you can probably see that my left hip's just a little bit lower, and what I tend to do is stand on that left hip. The longer leg the knee is bent, and what happens is the pelvis tends to rotate towards that long side, causing a tightness in the right side of my hip flexor. So just have a look at that yourself, and another way to see if you're tighter on one side than the other is to do a lunge. If I was going to check my right side, I would point my toes out towards my left and then lunge towards my left. Okay, now that's stretching on the inside, but then what you want to do then is rotate your trunk or your pelvis towards that left side. And just take note of how tight it feels there on the front of that right hip, the hip that you suspect might be a bit longer, or the leg that might be a bit longer. Right, and then go to the other side, point your toes now to the right, and lunge towards the right, and then rotate your pelvis towards the right. Now I can feel that I'm not as tight when I do that, so that just confirms to me that I have a left leg shortness and I'm over tight in my right hip flexor. So what that means is that, like I said before, your pelvis is slightly rotated in a normal standing position, and with every step you take there's a derotation of the pelvis and the spine, so that when your pelvis rotates, all the action happens here in the spine. So every single step there's a little rotation in your spine and creating stress in the joints of your spine. So that's why it's quite important to nail this and to make sure that this isn't contributing to any of your back pain. So the way you stretch these hip flexors, there's two things I want you to do. One is to stretch the tight long leg hip flexor, and the other is we're going to talk about a heel raise. So to stretch out, first of all, I'm going to stretch my right tight hip flexor. So I'm going to, I always confuse myself here, right, point my left toe towards the left, and I'm going to lunge towards the left, alright, and then rotate slightly my pelvis towards the left as well. And now I'm feeling a nice stretch down the groin and into the front of the hip flexor. Now you just want to hold that stretch for about 20 seconds. And after your 20 seconds, relax off and then repeat it again. So that's a static stretch for that area there. A dynamic stretch would be something like a lunge, where you just lunge forwards and backwards, so you get this there and up. Lunge to the left, rotate to the left and up. And just do that about probably 6 to 12 times. Now I'll do that about 3 to 6 times a day. As a maintenance thing, once you feel that there's a bit of an evening out of the hip flexor tightness, probably once a day would be enough to keep it loose. Alright, so the second thing we're going to get you to do is get a heel raise. They cost about $5, and always recommend you undercompensate. Like if you think that your hip level is about a centimetre, only get a 4mm heel raise. If you think it's more than that, maybe an 8mm heel raise, and you just put that in whatever shoe you're wearing, especially if you're active. If you're running or playing sport or anything like that, you're going to find a real difference. And as a side note, you'll actually feel, if you've got problems in like shin splints, knee, hip or foot problems on one particular side, quite often, about 8-9 times out of 10, it's because of a leg length discrepancy. So by correcting that leg length, often you'll reduce a lot of those symptoms associated with running and sport. So there's a link on the bottom or on this page somewhere where you can actually get a heel raise. I've sourced a fairly good price for you. I think it's under $5, but any chemist should be able to sell them to you as well. So I recommend just trying it out. Leave it in your shoe for a couple of weeks and see how it goes. When you've got tight hip flexors, the research has shown that the abdominals, especially the lower abdominals, the transversus abdominis, is an abdominal muscle that goes right around the spine and helps protect your spine. That's the muscle that we exercise in Pilates. When you tighten the hip flexor, you get a reciprocal weakening of the abdominals. So it's really important to not only stretch out the hip flexors, but strengthen your abdominals. In tomorrow's video, we're going to go through how to do the perfect sit-up, and I'm going to show you 2 of the most effective Pilates exercises that I teach my clients. Until then, take care of your back. It's the only one you've got.